Hi, I'm Jay Thomas, the Executive Director of the Vinyl Sustainability Council. Welcome to this episode of Viability in Action. Viability in Action is a series of stories of organizations that are utilizing grant funding made available from the Vinyl Institute's PVC Recycling Grant Program. Today we're here in Houston, Texas at Every Shelter to talk with the co-founder and CEO, Scott Key. Scott's organization has been repurposing vinyl billboards into shelter products for refugees for a number of years. But the organization is really much more than about just recycling and repurposing vinyl billboards. So let's go inside and talk to Scott and hear the rest of the story. So we're here today with the co-founder and CEO of Every Shelter, Scott Key. Thanks for spending some time with us.
Thanks for coming to our office in Houston.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think we actually, our first acquaintance was several years ago. I think it's because I found out about the work that you were doing in repurposing vinyl billboards, and that sort of fits with the vision or the mission of the Vinyl Institute and keeping vinyl materials out of landfill and recycled. And but then it was, I think, last year when the Viability Grant Program became available that we were able to sort of, bring together the missions of our two organizations for this good cause of not only repurposing these materials, but helping your organization to do the great work you do and helping build better lives for refugees. And so, of course, your organization is much more than just repurposing billboards. So we'd love to hear some background information about the mission of your organization.
Absolutely. I'll start with one statistic, and that's that refugees stay displaced for 20 years on average globally. And when I was in architecture school, that was the statistic that really convicted me. Whatever right now, if you were to kind of just pull up in your mind's eye, like what a refugee shelter looks like, it probably doesn't jive well with 20 years of living. And it's a fact that really refugees all over the world experience a pretty extreme housing crisis. And so when I was in architecture school, we started working on our first product, which is a modular insulated flooring system, and we still manufacture it today. We retrofit refugee shelters with a insulated, clean floor so that they don't have to live in the dirt. It keeps them warm in the wintertime. And that was really kind of our education into this space, and since then we've really kind of grown in both our impact and scale from there. So yeah, we help refugees create better homes. That's what we say at Every Shelter.
And so one of the interesting things about your organization, I think, is the way you've been able to be innovative and come into these situations and come up with new ideas and ways of doing things. And one of those, I think, is the Shelter Depot concept. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Back when I was doing floors exclusively in Lebanon, we had families in other settlements from where our pilot site was asking for our floors by name. And we thought, of course we'll get you floors, but we found out that there were three different bureaucracies kind of standing in the way: the Ministry of Social Affairs, the UN, and their implementing charity. They all had to sign off on it. I think for most of us, if we thought there were three bureaucracies between us and a decision at Home Depot, we'd balk at that. And so that was really kind of where the idea of our hardware stores came in, which is, it shouldn't be radical, but what if we let adults make decisions for themselves? What if we gave refugees agencies back? In these contexts in refugee camps, often refugees are just given the same thing, whether they want it, whether they need it. It's really kind of need blind. And so we launched our first one last year, February 2023, and within the first week we were sold out of 3 different product categories pretty much immediately. And since then we've started a campaign to build more of them. We actually open up the next one next month. Both of our current stores are in Uganda, but the first one is in a refugee camp of 270,000 refugees, primarily from South Sudan. The new store that launches next month opens is primarily going to serve new arrivals coming in from the DRC, Democratic Republic of the Congo. So the idea with the store is that really they can be adaptable to the context. So they're both in Uganda, but they're really dramatically different contexts, different cultures, different building preferences. In the case of South Sudan, a lot of those families have been there for a while. Their needs are different than the folks who are literally right now streaming in from the DRC. I was there 2 weeks ago to help get the store started up. These are families that are literally entering the camp and have nowhere to live. They just live in a field, and so their needs are quite different. And our hope and what's happening is that those stores are actually be able to be adaptable to the needs in that context, because they're customers. We're serving our customers, and we want to serve them really well.
But it's really more than just a store, right? I mean, you're giving agency to people, you're employing people through this concept, and you're giving them dignity and the ability to make choices, as you said.
Absolutely. Yeah, and if a family doesn't have the ability to buy, which they're subsidized goods there, if they can't buy, we've got partnerships that people can plant trees instead. Actually earn the products that are there, build schools. We've done a lot of community projects where partners that have funding, we can create incentives for the refugees to actually do really great things in their communities while earning products at the store. And for us, as every shelter, it actually gives us a kind of a pipeline to innovate. And so my whole staff in Uganda, their goal, their reason to exist is to take in customer feedback and pilot ideas constantly. Sometimes they're really simple. Sometimes it's just a matter of stocking something new at the store. But oftentimes we find it takes some level of invention. And so we can actually very rapidly take in a community idea, pilot it, and if it's successful, ultimately it has an outlet at the store. So it's really kind of collapsed the feedback loop and the innovation cycle for us to have that store in place.
So tell us about the Bashe Bora and how does that fit into this whole concept?
Yeah, so if you stay in my space long enough, you know that like the current gold standard tarp doesn't last long. If you're watching this video, 20 years of displacement, current tarp lasts about 3 to 6 months. I was in a refugee camp in 2018 and I saw a Lebanese family, it's actually a Syrian family in Lebanon. I saw their shelter from a distance, and it was the Prime Minister's face kind of like wrapping over like a house form, and quite honestly just wanted to take a picture of it. But when we started talking to the family, we discovered that it was a billboard, and they'd been using that material for 2 years with no issues. And so it was a light bulb moment for us where it was, clearly it was a waste stream. And if that material was free, it's something that we could actually use at a low-cost way to serve the families that we serve. And so Bashe Bora is Swahili for better tarp. It's kind of slang, but actually a refugee named it that because they've experienced the current tarps, which are not good, and this is better. And so it's billboard material that we've actually harvested from East Africa, and we train refugees to heat weld it, hiding the advertisement, turning it into a really desirable upcycled product, and we sell it through the hardware stores and distribute it also in emergency context as well, where a purchase isn't necessary. So.
And so I guess that's the connection, right, between Uganda and the United States is the Bashe Bora. It's this tarp that you figured out how to use for refugees and helping shelter them, but realizing that it could be used here in the U.S. as well for disaster relief.
Yeah, it was sort of an accident. We can get that material easier here, and so when we were doing a lot of the product experimentation, it was easier for me to get my hands on the material in Texas than it was to bring material in from East Africa. So we always had this mindset of serving refugees with it. We started doing this experimentation, and then Hurricane Laura hit Louisiana, which is just next door to us. So this is 2020, and I'm a Houstonian. I've been here for multiple hurricanes now, and we just felt really compelled to serve our neighbors closer at home, and we were able to get our hands on a lot more of the material and actually cover damaged roofs with it. And so it's very similar in need in some ways, but it was an application closer to home that we just pursued, and over time we've been able to cover 6,000 homes already. And so it's been interesting to just kind of see that overlap coming closer to home.
And we've been lucky to be able to participate and help you with that program. You've applied for and received 2 grants through the VIABILITY grant program. Can you talk a little bit about the impact of those grants and how that's helped you to make progress on that project?
Yeah, so I mentioned that Bashe Bora is a double layered product. The reason is because advertisers really want to be careful with their branding material. And so that double-sidedness allows us to hide the branding. Well, when we were doing this work in Louisiana and Mississippi, the billboard companies didn't require us to hide the branding. But to scale it up, we needed to do processing. with processing comes cost. And so we needed to find a way domestically at a low cost to actually hide that branding in a similar way that we do in Uganda. And so that first grant that we received actually enabled us to test it at scale. Can we find a manufacturer to partner with to actually take this and upcycle it into something that met the billboard company's requirements of hiding the branding material? So we're able at a pretty decent scale to actually take that raw material, which is used billboard material, and turn it into a finished product as well that met that requirement. The second grant that we're really grateful that we just got news that we received is going to enable us to kind of do the other two sides of that supply chain. Is, can we identify more and more billboard companies here that want to work with us to actually upcycle their waste stream? And then on the other end, can we find more disaster relief agencies that want to take this product and use it? We've already had enough experiences to know that it's quite desirable. It lasts a lot longer. The FEMA tarp, it even says on their website, it lasts about 30 days. Just as an example, going back to Hurricane Laura, 82% of the roofs needed significant repairs. That's a lot of roofers. It takes a lot longer for those roofs to get repaired than 30 days. And so, the agencies that we've worked with already really love the tarp because it just lasts a lot longer, and they're not having to send volunteer crews up there to replace the tarp over and over again. And so this next grant, we're going to really start to try to scale this up and really kind of meet all the needs of all three parts of the supply chain for us: the raw materials, the production, and then distribution. So, yeah.
So you've already got some, pretty impressive stats already. You've distributed emergency tarps to 6,000 homes, 15,000 individuals served, 150,000 tons of material that's been repurposed and kept out of the landfill. So what's your vision for this, sort of part of your organization?
Yeah. So we're sitting in Texas. Texas has 37,000 billboards alone. Yeah, that's one state. With the number of disasters that happen, anytime you see a tornado in the news or you see a hurricane in the news, one of the things that you should realize is every time communities have their homes have damaged roofs, especially with asphalt shingles, they just get ripped off. But when they get ripped off, everything inside your house is vulnerable. The drywall, the furniture. So tarping is actually a huge need in a wind event. Take that supply of material. I said 37,000 billboards in Texas. This is a really incredible second life for that material. We don't have to grind it. We don't have to melt it. We simply kind of hide the advertisement, and then we can serve a family for 12 to 24 months while they wait for a repair. And it's interesting. When we deployed a lot of the tarps in the first grant cycle, the feedback that we got is like, "Hey, these things are awesome, but they were bigger sometimes even than the roof that they were going on," which is a lot better than being too small.
Right.
But billboards on average are 14 feet by 48 feet. And so I think a lot of the agencies were just really pretty happy to have a tarp where they weren't having to make, joints, I guess. They weren't having to overlap or use 3 or 4 tarps on it. So yeah, it was great, and we're excited to see it scale up.
Yeah, it's a great story. The whole thing's a great story, and we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today.
Yeah, we're excited to see this grow.
So, if there are viewers that were, inspired by your story, how can they get involved with Every Shelter?
They can go to our website. If you're local to Houston, we have an annual event, and we would love to have you here. We do events quite a bit in town, but you can go to the website. We try to keep it, full of information so you can continue to inform yourself on specifically what it is, the people that we serve, refugees. Right now there's 108 million refugees in the world, 108, million, and that's going to grow to 250 million over the next 3 decades. And so this really is a pretty pressing crisis globally, and we would definitely invite you to come to the website and learn more. We would love it if you'd support us financially to help improve the physical lives of refugees all around the world. So, yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, and thanks for joining us in this episode of Viability in Action. We hope you'll join us in the next episode.